Hey everybody, welcome back to Speedy's Garage. I knew it. I knew they had to do it with everything else going on. They absolutely had to, and here we are. Let's get this guy out of the way. It's a project for another day. Okay, I'm gonna try to keep this brief because you guys have been watching the channel for a while know I love to talk. It's kind of my superpower. So I'm gonna try to make this one short and sweet. So we're hearing this week that the 5.7 liter Hemi production is going to continue, and not only continue, but it's going to continue at the Dundee plant in Michigan. Now, not surprisingly, that is very close to where the Ram truck is built in Sterling Heights, as well as the Durango in Jefferson. The Durango is supposed to continue with the 5.7, I believe, at least through 2025. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on that. However, the Ram hasn't had the 5.7 liter since the 2025 model year started. So it went to the inline six. And where there's smoke, there's fire. So while they haven't announced that the 5.7 is going back in the Ram, I will bet you anything by 2026, it's gonna have the 5.7 liter V8 back in it. I mean, it has to, with Ford and GM still offering V8s in their trucks. And what's really kind of strange is the 5.7 and the inline six, they make about the same horsepower. And somebody will say, oh, the inline six makes a few more, but not enough to matter. And they get really the same gas mileage too, which is kind of weird. Like, why did they go through all the trouble of creating the inline six to replace the V8 when it's basically not any better from an efficiency standpoint? I would have thought if they were making these changes, it would be gas mileage related or something along those lines. Now, it could have something to do with the new Charger and it being a standardized platform that could have the inline six or an electric power plant in it, and they wanted to standardize. That's a possibility, but at the end of the day, it didn't really make sense considering they both get the same mileage and make about the same horsepower. Now, where I think GM and Ford got this right is they do offer smaller power plants. I think all the way down to like a turbo 4-cylinder, and then a turbo V6 or 6-cylinder and a V8. So the customer had the option of the engine that they actually wanted to get. I don't know why Stellantis thought it was a good idea just to rip the Band-Aid off and go cold turkey, no more V8s. Obviously it was a bad decision. Now some might hope that this 5.7 could come back to the Ram in 2025. And I don't know how all this works if crash testing and CAFE standards that are still in place, at least for now. I think they're getting rolled back some, but those standards that vehicle manufacturers have to meet, I don't know if they're based on a model year or a platform. I'm gonna guess it's the model year. And if they've already gone through all the testing for 2025, there's probably not enough time for them to get the 5.7 in any 2025 model. So the earliest I think we're gonna see it is probably in 2026. And I personally loved the, I think it was called the Eagle 5.7 liter engine. That was when it got VVT. My 09 Challenger that I purchased, it was an RT, had that engine in it. And of course I sent it off to Arrington, got a stroker motor, a built 6 liter put in it. We supercharged it, had a ton of fun with that car. So I've got some history with that engine and it was great. Crew Chief Greg has that motor in not only his Ram 1500, but he also has a Durango RT with the tow and go package on it. And that tow and go package, he almost bought an SRT version, but the price to step up to SRT was like 12 grand at the time, extra. And he could just check the box for tow and go. And I think his is a 2021 or 2022. I can't remember exactly the model year, but when you selected that tow and go package, it gave you pretty much everything the SRT model had except the 6.4, and it just wasn't worth it to him to pay that extra $12,000 for the extra, 90 horsepower or whatever it is. And we have towed not only my cars, but his all over the country with both his Ram 1500 and now the Durango, and it's a great towing engine. We don't even know the vehicle and the trailers behind it when we're traveling all over the place. Now, the big question I kind of have is it going to be the same 5.7 liter from 2009? And my gut says yes. There's probably not enough time to develop anything new. They may be able to find a way to put some enhancements on it, an intake or something like that, but I'll bet it's exactly the same. And that means it's gonna probably still have 395 horsepower. And I've made some notes here because you guys love to correct me in the comments and I don't mind at all. I learn from you guys a lot too, so please continue to correct me, but I did make some notes so I get all this right. 395 horsepower at 5,600 RPM, 410 foot-pound of torque at 3,950, which is important because that's where you're usually towing and pulling things. Here's the really interesting thing. The highway mileage is 23, which is awesome in my opinion. City is 18. If you're watching this channel and you're watching this content or this video, you probably already know all of this, but I want to mention it just to be sure. And I hope that they make e-torque an option and not standard. That would kind of stink because some of us want simplicity. Keep it simple, stupid is one of my mottos. And the inline six twin turbo, it's basically the same. The 5.7 has on average, depending on the options and gearing, everything you pick, an 11,500 pound towing capacity. The inline six twin turbo, it's 420 horsepower at 5,200 RPM, 469 foot-pounds of torque at 3,500, which isn't bad. City, 18 mile per gallon, highway 25. So you're again right there kind of in the same ballpark. And Crew Chief Greg actually thought the inline six might be a pretty good motor for towing and hauling based on his experience as a truck driver back in the day. But it really hasn't seemed to do very well. And why hasn't it gained traction? Why did they build the engine, I guess, is the bigger question. Again, it's all the way back to having the same pretty much performance and abilities as the V8, which everybody loved. And on top of that, that inline six twin turbo, it's bound to be more expensive to manufacture, and it's certainly more complicated with the turbos, the oil lines, and everything else going along with it. And now we're starting to see they're having problems. Blown out cats and burned up catalytic converters, a lot of problems with thermostats. You can find this stuff online. And the thermostats, it's not a super simple, easy swap like we had in the 5.7 and other vehicles. It's pretty deep, and you have to dig down into the engine to get to it behind a bunch of stuff. So they've made it overly complex for not really any gain over their V8 that was super popular, like I said. And surely they wouldn't do something weird like not give it a dipstick. Now, since this engine is coming back to being produced in Michigan, in the United States, and it's very close to the Ram plant and the Durango plant, I think there's been a missed opportunity in Jeep. You see a whole lot of Jeep Wranglers with a 5.7 swap or even a 6.4 swap, and sometimes even a Hellcat swap. Hellcat might be a little overboard. The 6.4 would be pretty cool. A 5.7 as a base engine in the Wrangler would be awesome. I've always thought that was a little bit of a missed opportunity. The problem with the Jeep is for what it is, especially that they do put a 392 in the 392 edition Jeep Wrangler, but it's super expensive. That thing, I think, starts over $90,000, and that's a lot of money for a Jeep considering it's based on technology that's, it's pretty old, let's be honest, and it's kind of a utilitarian type vehicle. To be up around 100 grand for that's quite a bit, but they could put that 5.7 in there pretty easily, I think, and keep it in a what I would call reasonable price range. So maybe we'll see that, and that would be a pretty awesome vehicle to have, especially if they keep it or put a manual transmission in to go with it. Otherwise, I would want the 8-speed. And now if we go back and look, once it was announced that the V8 was no longer going to be available, I suspect, now somebody's going to argue and say there were other factors, and maybe there are. Again, leave me comments if I get any of this wrong. But the Ram truck sales started to decline dramatically. And I think they were down in 2024, 19% over 2023. And if you could say, well, truck sales were down overall. Well, that's not really true. I got some stuff here. GM basically had flat sales, and Fords were actually up 4.2%. Now, shockingly, Toyota Tundra, which is still in that same ballpark of truck, their twin turbo V6, the sales were up 18%. And I'm very surprised. It's kind of a head scratcher because that twin turbo V6 motor has also had a lot of trouble. And I think what we're starting to see is manufacturers tried to shrink those, engines down for efficiency, even though the inline six twin turbo isn't really that much more efficient, or isn't any more efficient, I'm gonna say, than the 5.7 V8. And they're pushing them too hard because Toyota's had a ton of trouble out of that twin turbo V6, and now we're starting to see a lot of problems from the Hurricane inline six engines. And another weird thing is, the one I've been talking about that makes 420 horsepower, it's the standard output. They have a high output that's 550 horsepower, but the towing capacity is actually less. Standard output, like I said, is around 11.5, 11.9, somewhere around in there, depending on how you option the truck and how much it weighs, a few other factors. if I got the numbers right, the high output is only 9920. So why are you losing, around 1,500 pounds of towing capacity with a 130, more powerful engine, 130 horsepower, more powerful engine? That doesn't really make sense unless there's some kind of problem. They're pushing those engines so hard that when you start towing with them, it was tearing stuff up. So if you're watching, you probably love the V8. That's why you hopped in to check out this video. So here's some more exciting news that I think is really good for, I'm going to call it Dodge, even though it's really Ram. They're sort of separate divisions, but I'm hoping we start to see more of this type of stuff bubble up, and maybe 2026 can be a turnaround year. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you think. How's 2026 going to go for Dodge and Ram and these platforms? Had I been in charge, I would have kept everything the same. I would have kept the V8, 5.7. I would have added the inline six to the lineup and given consumers a choice, let them pick which one they liked, maybe get a few of them out on the street, show that they were a reliable power plant and could be comparable to the V8. Now, in my opinion, to replace the V8, it needs to be better than the V8 because there's that cool factor of the sound, and we just love V8s for some reason as Americans, especially in this community. So that's something we're gonna have to think about. So you guys that need a truck for whatever reason, if you're truck shopping, if you had a V8 that got the same fuel economy or close, the same towing capacity, and an inline six that even got a little bit better fuel economy and had a little bit better towing capacity, which one would you pick, and tell me why? Leave me a comment and let me know that. Is it really because it's a V8, or is there something else involved that's steering you away from the inline six? Is it the reliability? Is it because it's a brand new engine? Hasn't been around long enough for us to know how reliable it is, or is it strictly because it's just not a V8? I'm super curious about you guys that are out truck shopping, what your comments are on that. Personally, if I'm truck shopping and it's a V8 versus an inline six, unless the inline six has a ton of advancements and just really puts the V8 to shame, I'm buying the V8 just because. That may sound silly, but it is what it is. And interestingly, if you watched the Super Bowl and saw the Ram Super Bowl commercial, shockingly, even their marketing team understands there's a problem. When they were showing the vehicles or the trucks that we know are inline six models today, they overdubbed V8 engine sounds on the trucks, which was just crazy to me. All right, so I did keep this short as promised. Please leave me some comments below and let me know what you think. I'm very curious which one you would pick given an inline six twin turbo, even if it's better and more towing capacity and better fuel economy than its V8 counterpart. What do you have? I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Be sure to check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedy's_garage, as well as the website, www.speedysgarage.net. And hopefully, I'll see you out there.